Hi guys, I'm Brian McCauley and welcome to the McCauley's Design Workshop. Today in part 7 of the guitar build, we're going to do some work on the neck. Essentially we're going to cut it out of the blank to its rough shape. We're going to do the joinery for the neck to the body joint, and we're going to install the truss rod. So if you'd like to see how I did it, stick around. I used a template that I made from my plans to trace the shape of the neck onto the neck blank, and then I just took it to my bandsaw and cut it out. I stayed a little bit outside of my lines, so it's just a rough shape of a neck at this point. Next I used my domino for the mortise and tenon joinery that will attach the neck to the body of the guitar. And of course I had to do a test fit. This is probably the most exciting test fit I've done on any piece I've ever built. It's actually starting to look like a guitar. So, it is at this point that I realized my first mistake. At least the first mistake that I know of. Who knows, I could have made many more up until now. What I need to do is I need to route a groove down the center of this neck to accept the truss rod. That would have been much easier if I had done this before I cut the neck to its rough shape, because the way it is now, it won't run straight along the fence of my router table. So what I'm going to do is use some double-sided tape and attach it to this board, which will run straight along my fence. This little jig has a center line, my neck has a center line, and I'm just going to line them up and use this 1/4-inch piece of plywood to run along my fence. So let's get that going. Before I can route the groove for the truss rod, I need to drill a 3/8 inch hole about 5/8 of an inch deep into the base of the neck where it meets the body. Now I can attach the neck to the piece of 1/4-inch plywood, make sure it's all lined up with the center lines, and then route my groove. To start making the truss rod itself, I took a piece of 3/8 inch round stock and drilled a 3/16 inch hole into it that will accept the 3/16 inch round bar, which is actually the truss rod. And then I welded them together so that the 3/16 inch rod could not spin inside of the 3/8 inch rod. And because I am a horrible welder, I had a decent amount of filing to do to clean up that weld. Next, I test fit the rod in the neck of the guitar and then realized that I couldn't get it back out. So I filed the 3/8 inch round bar flush with the surface of the neck and continued to build the truss rod while it was inside of the neck. The next step was to put some threads on the end of the rod that's by the headstock. These are number 10 by 32 threads per inch. With that done, I had to next chisel out the cavity where the nut would go in the headstock. With that done, I could start making the nut, and this is again a piece of 3/8 inch round stock that I'm drilling a hole in so that I can tap it with threads later. With the hole drilled, I can cut the threads on the inside of the nut. Now I need some way to be able to turn the nut, so I'm using a hacksaw to cut a groove on the other side of the nut so that a flathead screwdriver will fit into there. And that way I can make the adjustments to the truss rod as necessary. And now I can go ahead and make sure that everything fits. With the truss rod working and in place, I need to cover it with a piece of wood. For this, I'm using a leftover piece of binding that I used for the body of the guitar. It happened to just fit perfectly, so I'm going to cut it to length and glue it in. I need to make sure that I don't get any glue on the truss rod when I do this though, otherwise it won't function properly. Alright guys, so that's essentially putting the neck together. Obviously there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to it. We need to put a fretboard on it, and it needs to be shaped, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with the headstock, and the heel of it needs trimmed off. But aside from all of that, the neck is essentially built. I went back and forth with this neck to body joint. I thought about it for like a week, and I tried 5 different ways to cut the dovetail joint, and none of them came out, you know, the way I felt like it should. And then the other traditional way of attaching a neck to a body is with a mortise and tenon. And I thought, if I'm just going to do mortise and tenon joint, why wouldn't my domino work? I still don't know if it's going to work or not. This is totally experimental at this point. So when this is all done, we might have a guitar and we might not. It's all up in the air now, I guess. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, like it, give it a thumbs up, all that good stuff, and please be sure to share it with your friends. All right, thanks. Be sure to follow me on my website, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.